My name's Daniel Mercer, but everyone calls me Dan. I'm 34, I write code for a living, and I thought I knew what silence felt like. You know, after hours in an office building, the hum of servers when you're the last one logged in. The quiet of an apartment at 3 a.m. when the only sound is your own refrigerator kicking on. But out here, in the Appalachian backcountry, that silence felt alive. I took the trip because my life had started feeling like a loop. Wake up, work from home, stare at a screen, scroll through Twitter, fall asleep, repeat. I hadn't been on a real vacation in years. I grew up in Virginia, near the Blue Ridge, and I remembered how the mountains always made me feel grounded. So I figured, why not take 3 days, hike into the woods, camp, and reset my brain? It was a mistake. The first day was normal enough. I parked at a small lot off a service road, loaded my pack, and followed the trailhead deeper into the mountains. Late October air was sharp and cool. Leaves littered the trail, crunching under my boots. I felt good, stronger than I expected, honestly. I didn't see anyone else after the first mile. Just the long ridgelines, endless trees, and the occasional distant hawk circling high above. By dusk, I'd set up camp near a creek. My tent stood between 2 maples, firewood stacked in a neat pile. I ate instant ramen out of a camping stove pot and let the sounds of water and wind carry me into a kind of calm. Then, sometime past midnight, the scream came. I woke instantly, like my body had been waiting for something to go wrong. The noise wasn't faint. It tore through the dark valley like someone had set off a siren. Long, high-pitched, sharp enough to cut through the rustle of trees and the steady rush of water. It wasn't human. I've heard people scream before, at sports games, at concerts, even once during a car wreck. But this was stretched and distorted, like vocal cords pulled beyond what a throat should allow. And it wasn't any animal I knew either. Not a fox, not a bobcat, not a coyote. I'd heard those growing up. This was worse. I lay frozen in my sleeping bag, staring at the nylon roof of my tent, heart hammering. The scream came again, echoing across the mountains, bouncing off ridges, impossible to place. Then silence. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. Morning light should have made things better, but it didn't. While making coffee, I noticed claw marks on a nearby tree. 4 deep grooves carved into the bark, about 6 feet up, too high for a bear's casual swipe. I ran my hand over the grooves. Fresh, clean edges, pale wood beneath. I told myself it had to be an animal. Bears climb trees. Cougars, maybe. I forced myself to pack up and keep moving. Still, every step deeper into the backcountry felt heavier. The second night, I camped near a small clearing, thinking visibility might help. I ate, stowed my food, zipped up my tent. The woods had gone silent in a way that didn't feel natural. Even the creek nearby sounded muffled, like the forest was holding its breath. Around 1 a.m., the scream came back. This time, it was closer. It began far off, like the night before, but then another joined it. A second scream, higher, sharper, answering from the opposite ridge. Then a third. My chest tightened as I realized they were circling. I clutched my flashlight and unzipped the tent a crack. The forest beyond looked normal, just endless black trees swaying. Then I noticed branches shifting, snapping, not with the random weight of wind, but in rhythm, like something pacing. My light caught movement at the tree line, something ducking just out of sight. Not a deer, not a bear, taller. I zipped the tent and held the knife from my pack all night, waiting for the fabric walls to tear open. By dawn, I'd made up my mind. I wasn't staying a third night. I shoved everything back into my pack, hands shaking. That's when I found it. My food bag slashed open, wrappers shredded, contents scattered. The weirdest part? No tracks. The ground was soft, layered with wet leaves. Anything heavy should have left prints. But there was nothing, just more claw marks. On the other side of my tent now. I didn't bother eating. I just started hiking back toward the trailhead. The woods felt different on the return, darker, even in daylight. I kept glancing over my shoulder. Every snapped twig sent adrenaline coursing through me. I forced myself not to break into a run, knowing panic could get me hurt or lost. By mid-afternoon, I was close. I recognized the slope leading down toward the parking lot. Relief surged in me like a drug. I thought I was safe. That's when the scream erupted directly behind me. It wasn't distant this time. It was close. So close I felt it vibrate in my chest, rattling my bones. I dropped my pack without thinking and bolted. My lungs burned as I sprinted down the trail, branches whipping my arms, roots snagging at my boots. The scream followed, impossibly loud, almost inside my skull now. It didn't fade with distance. It grew. By the time I stumbled into the gravel lot, I was crying. My car was right there. I fumbled for the keys, yanking them out, nearly dropping them. Another scream rose, so high-pitched it felt like my eardrums might burst. I yanked the door open, threw myself inside, and slammed it shut. Silence. The sudden absence of sound was worse somehow. My chest heaved, my ears rang. I sat there gripping the steering wheel, tears blurring my vision, waiting for something to slam into the car. Nothing did. When I finally dared to look, I saw them. For deep claw marks, gouged across the driver's side door. Fresh. I drove straight into town, half out of my mind. My hands wouldn't stop shaking, even after I reached a diner and tried to eat something. When I told the waitress, an older woman with a voice like gravel, she froze. "You were in the valley past Ash Creek, weren't you?" she asked quietly. I nodded. She leaned closer. "People go missing out there. Always hear the screaming first. Then nothing but claw marks left behind." I wanted to laugh, to tell her it was some old mountain legend. But I couldn't. Not after seeing the marks on my car. Not after feeling the scream vibrate through my skull. It's been weeks since then. I can't sleep without waking up drenched in sweat. Sometimes, late at night, when the city is quiet, I swear I hear it again. The scream. Not outside. Inside my head. I grew up in Boone County, West Virginia, and I've spent enough time in the woods to know what belongs and what doesn't. Cabins, especially. They don't just sprout overnight, tucked miles off a game trail, with smoke curling from the chimney like somebody just stoked the fire. That's why what Chris and I found that October afternoon still makes my stomach turn. Chris and I had been fighting for weeks. Nothing explosive, just the slow erosion of two people who keep circling the same arguments until they wear ruts into the ground. He thought I was too critical. I thought he wasn't present enough. Couples therapy was a word we tossed around but never scheduled. So when I suggested a long loop hike out past the Coal River headwaters, it wasn't for the exercise. It was a test. See if the woods could strip us back to something simple. The first half of the day was fine. Crisp air, orange leaves tumbling down, our boots crunching in rhythm. We even laughed a little, shared trail mix. By 3 o'clock, we'd gone off trail onto an old logging cut, one of those overgrown ribbons that deer use more than people now. That's when we saw it. The cabin sat about 30 yards off the cut, half hidden in a stand of hemlocks. Weathered boards, one small window, roof slanting like a lean-to. I wouldn't have noticed it if not for the smoke. A pale ribbon of gray drifting out of the rusted stovepipe, dissolving against the sky. "Someone's living out here," Chris said, surprised. I shook my head. That makes no sense. There's no road access. And look at it. Roofs sagging, no glass in the panes. It's falling apart. Still, smoke meant fire, and fire meant someone had been there recently. We looked at each other. Curiosity won. The closer we got, the stranger it felt. The boards weren't just weathered. They looked cut and placed recently, but rubbed with something dark, maybe ash, to make them look old. A patchwork of metal sheets covered the roof like someone had welded them in a hurry. "Doesn't look abandoned," Chris muttered. I stepped onto the porch, and the wood groaned under my weight. I knocked. The sound echoed unnaturally, like the boards were hollow. From inside, we heard it. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate. 1, 2, 3. Then silence. I glanced at Chris, heart hammering. "Hello," I called. "We didn't mean to bother you. Just passing through." Nothing. But I swear I felt someone standing inches away on the other side of that door, holding their breath. The air felt wrong. Heavy. "Let's go," Chris whispered. And for once, I didn't argue. We hiked out fast, almost jogging until the trees thickened and the cabin was swallowed behind us. Neither of us spoke for a mile. That night, lying in our rental cabin back near Madison, I couldn't stop thinking about it. The smoke, the footsteps, the silence. Chris brushed it off as some hermit or squatter who didn't want visitors. But my gut told me different. The next morning, I pulled up the GPS track on my phone. I dropped a pin right near where we saw it. "Come on," I told him. "We'll just look." In daylight. He groaned, but followed. By noon we were back in the same stretch of woods, following the same deer trail. I kept checking the GPS. The pin led us straight to it. Should have, anyway. But the cabin was gone. Not collapsed, not burned. Gone. No boards, no stovepipe, no porch. Just leaf litter and saplings. What the hell? Chris muttered. I walked in circles, searching for any trace. Nothing. No foundation stones, no chimney bricks. The only new thing was a strip of bright orange survey tape tied to a tree. Another 20 yards on, another piece. And then I saw it. A trail camera strapped chest high to a maple, its lens glinting in the light. Hunters, Chris said, trying to explain it away. But the screws were fresh, the bark raw where the strap had dug in. And the angle wasn't right. It wasn't aimed at deer paths. It was aimed right where the cabin had been. A shiver crawled down my neck. That's when I noticed something stuck between the camera and its housing. A folded slip of paper. I pulled it free. It was a Polaroid. Of me. Standing on the porch of the cabin the day before, my hand raised mid-knock. We didn't run, exactly. But we didn't waste time either. The hike back to the car was silent except for our boots hammering the ground. Every creak in the woods made me jump. When we finally reached the gravel lot, I nearly collapsed in relief. Our Subaru sat where we'd left it. But something was wrong. The front driver's tire was flat. Not punctured. Valve core missing, like someone had unscrewed it. Chris cursed and dug for the jack. My eyes scanned the tree line. That's when I heard it. A low whine, like an electric motor spooling up. I froze. From between the trunks, a gray wall slid into view. Canvas panels ratcheted between trees, forming a blind. In seconds, a square shape stood where there had been only brush. The cabin, reassembled, here at the trailhead. A figure in blaze orange stepped out, lifting what looked like a hunting rifle. But the sound that followed wasn't a gunshot. It was a soft PFF, like compressed air. Chris jerked, staggered, and went down. A dart jutted from his shoulder. "Chris!" I screamed, dropping beside him. Boots thundered on gravel. More figures rushed from the trees. One grabbed his legs. Another swung a hooked pole under the car, dragging at my jacket, trying to haul me out. I shrieked and wriggled free, skin tearing on the asphalt. In blind panic, I slammed the key fob, setting off the car alarm. The horn blared across the empty lot. The men froze, momentarily disoriented by the noise. I scrambled into the driver's seat, fumbling with the ignition. My hands shook so badly, I nearly dropped the keys. Through the windshield, I saw them hauling Chris backward, his arms limp, his head lolling. Then I saw the paper on my windshield. Another Polaroid. Me, crouched by Chris's body seconds earlier. Taken from less than 10 feet away. I drove until my hands cramped on the wheel, until my throat was raw from screaming. By the time I found a state trooper station, I was shaking too hard to stand. They searched. They found the lot, the trail, even the survey tape. But no cabin, no figures, no Chris. The only thing I had left was the Polaroid. I still have it. And sometimes, when I'm alone at night, I hear faint footsteps outside my apartment door. Slow, deliberate. 1, 2, 3, then silence. My name's Evan Rojas. I'm 29, and I make my living running live sound for small and mid-sized venues across the Southeast. It's not glamorous work, but it keeps me on the road, keeps the bills just barely paid, and sometimes it feels like the only thing keeping me sane. But there's one drive I'll never forget, one that still makes me tense up whenever the road bends into fog. It was past midnight when I wrapped load out at a music hall in Virginia. The band's van pulled away, and I was left to haul my own gear in my hatchback. I had a gig the next evening in Asheville, so I figured I'd push through the night and grab a cheap motel on the way down. The route I picked cut across the mountains, a shortcut I'd taken before, winding, narrow, but faster than the highway if you didn't mind switchbacks and guardrails that looked like they'd already lost too many fights. At first the night was beautiful, cold, clear, the road empty except for my headlights slicing through the dark. But then the fog came. If you've ever driven mountain roads in dense fog, you know how it is. Your brights make it worse. Your lows barely pierce 10 feet ahead, and every bend feels like the edge of the world. That's when I saw it. On the shoulder, half hidden by gray mist, stood a figure. Human-shaped, upright, perfectly still. I slowed, heart thumping. My brain scrambled for explanations. Hiker caught in the weather, maybe a hunter lost off the trail. But the stance was wrong. Too rigid, like it had been planted there. The head was tilted slightly to one side. I didn't roll down my window, didn't stop. Just eased past at 20 miles an hour, eyes locked on the thing until it vanished into the mirror. The fog swallowed it. I told myself it was nothing. Just a trick of the light. Just fatigue. But 2 miles later, on another hairpin, my headlights swept across it again. Same figure. Same tilt of the head. Same stillness. Waiting. My stomach dropped. There was no way someone could have run ahead that fast on those switchbacks. No way they'd stand in the exact same pose. I gripped the wheel so hard my knuckles ached. It's a signpost, I whispered to myself. Some kind of road marker. Just looks like a person. But I knew it wasn't true. At the next pull-off, I forced myself to stop. My hands were shaking. I got out, sucked in the cold, wet air, tried to calm down. My boots scraped gravel as I circled the car. That's when I saw it. A fresh zip tie cinched tight around the passenger side door handle. My blood ran cold. I yanked it off, heart hammering. Someone had been inches from my car while I was driving. On the back window, through the fog, a greasy palm print smeared across the glass. I wiped it off with my sleeve, climbed back inside, and locked every door. The fog thickened as I pushed on. Every curve, I expected to see it again. And I did. Over and over, just ahead, standing perfectly still, then gone once I passed. I thought about calling someone, but who? A trooper? My ex? What would I even say? There's a mannequin chasing me down Route 219? At some point I realized my gas was low. My brain went into panic math. 30 miles to the next station. Maybe less if I burned too fast. So I sped up. The road bent into a long stretch, fog boiling across the hood. And for the first time in an hour, the figure didn't appear. Relief washed through me like a drug, until I glanced in the rear view and saw it sitting in my back seat. Just a shadow, black and featureless, leaning forward as if watching me drive. I screamed and nearly jerked the wheel. In that instant, the figure vanished. No weight shift, no sound, just gone. I drove the next 5 miles half blind with tears, whispering prayers I didn't believe. When I finally rolled into a truck stop, I parked under the brightest floodlight I could find. My legs shook so badly, I almost fell out of the car. I popped the hatch to grab my bag, and there it was again. Not the figure. A small black disc, magnetized to the underside of the bumper. A tracker. Next to it, tucked into the hatch seam, a folded scrap of paper. In neat block letters, written in Sharpie. Keep driving. We'll catch up when it's thicker. I stumbled inside the truck stop, clutching the note like proof of my sanity. The cashier looked at me like I was strung out, muttered something about mountain weirdos when I begged her to call the sheriff. Deputies came, checked my car. They found the tracker, bagged it, told me they'd look into it. But when I asked about the figure in the fog, they just exchanged looks and shrugged. People see things up there, one finally said. Always have. Spirit, decoy, doesn't matter. Best thing you can do is not stop. It's been a year since that night. I can't take mountain shortcuts anymore. If fog rolls in on the interstate, I pull off and wait hours rather than risk it. But the worst part? 2 weeks ago, my phone buzzed in my pocket while I was mixing sound at a wedding reception. A notification, unknown AirTag detected moving with you. I tore apart my bag, my car, everything. Found nothing. But I can't shake the feeling that somewhere, just out of sight, it's still standing there, watching. My name's Marcus O'Neill. I turned 41 this year, and somewhere between the back-breaking hours at the warehouse and the constant buzz of fluorescent lights, I realized I'd stopped doing anything for myself. 2 weeks of unpaid leave finally lined up, and I told myself I'd use it the way I'd always meant to, section hiking a stretch of the Appalachian Trail. I wasn't chasing through hiker glory, not Katahdin or bust, just Damascus to Petersburg, a little over 100 miles. Enough to sweat out the warehouse air, enough to feel like I'd carried myself somewhere that mattered. The trail doesn't forgive misplaced reasons, though, and I think about that a lot now, especially when I dream of footsteps circling my tent. Day 1 went fine. Sun on my shoulders, pack heavier than it had any right to be, but manageable. My pace was clumsy, like I was stomping too loud for the forest, but I didn't care. Day 2, I met him. The first time was on a ridge above Whitetop. He passed me from behind, like I'd been standing still. Ragged parka, hood up even though the air was warm. His boots were unlaced, tongues flopping. He didn't look at me, didn't nod, didn't speak. Just drifted past with dead eyes, gaze fixed on the dirt ahead. I muttered, "Hey man," like I always did when passing another hiker. Nothing. I slowed to watch him. His stride never changed. Just a slow, even drift until the trees swallowed him. I shook it off. People hike in all kinds of moods. Maybe he was dealing with something. Maybe he'd just had enough of small talk. But less than an hour later, I saw him again. I'd stopped to refill water at a spring. When I came up the switchbacks, the ridge opened into a view. And there he was, already ahead. Same army parka, same dead-eyed drift. I froze. He couldn't have covered that distance. Not unless he'd left the trail entirely and cut through impossible terrain. "Hey," I called this time louder. He didn't turn, didn't even flinch. Just kept walking. Something in my chest went cold. That night, I camped at a shelter with one other hiker, a young woman from Ohio. We exchanged trail names, boiled ramen. She turned in early. I stayed up longer, trying to enjoy the fire I'd coaxed from damp wood. That's when I noticed them, a battered aluminum cook pot, dented on one side, and a wool cap folded beside it. I hadn't brought them, and the girl hadn't either. I set them just outside the fire's glow. When I crawled into my tent, I zipped the flap tight and listened. Sometime after midnight, I heard it, footsteps circling. Slow, deliberate, crunching leaves, then silence, then another shuffle. "Hello," I whispered, but my voice shook too much. The footsteps stopped. I didn't sleep at all. By day 4, he was everywhere. Sometimes ahead on the switchbacks, motionless until I blinked. Sometimes cresting a hill I couldn't possibly have reached. Once, at a road crossing, I saw him standing by a truck that rolled off as soon as I appeared. I told myself it was my mind playing tricks. Fatigue, dehydration. But then I opened a shelter register, a spiral notebook hikers leave messages in. I'd written my trail name, Warehouse, with a little note about pushing onto Chestnut Knob. And there, 2 lines above mine, written in the same ink, was my entry. Word for word. Except it was dated yesterday. Panic gnawed at me. I stopped leaving notes in the registers, stopped posting my progress on the hiking forums, stopped checking in with friends. But it didn't matter. At Jenkins' shelter, I opened my bounce box, a package I'd mailed ahead to resupply. The hostel owner handed it over with a smile. "Already signed for yesterday," he said. "But I guess you forgot something?" The signature was mine. Trail name in block letters, my handwriting perfectly mimicked. Inside, half the food was gone. That night, I hiked past dark, trying to outpace whatever game he was playing. The woods felt tight around me, every rustle a warning. I pitched my tent crooked on a slope, too tired to care. At 2 in the morning, something tapped the nylon. Just once. Then silence. I held my breath. A second tap, harder. I gripped my knife, heart slamming. The tapping moved, side to side, circling again. Finally it stopped. When I unzipped at dawn, there was nothing but a scuffed boot print in the mud. Too large to be mine. I decided to leave the trail. Forget the section hike, forget the pride. I just wanted to live long enough to clock in again at the warehouse. I picked the quickest road crossing and bolted down side trails until I found asphalt. My legs ached, lungs burning. That's when he stepped out of the rhododendron. Same parka, same dead eyes. He pressed a hand to my chest and shoved. I reeled against the guardrail, overlooking a ravine 30 feet down. His weight leaned in, trying to lever me over. I jammed a trekking pole through his parka webbing and fumbled the bear spray I'd carried since Springer. I let loose right in his face. He screamed, clawing at his eyes, the dead mask finally broken. I bolted down the road, hearing him stumble after me, wheezing, coughing. The hiss of a log truck drowned everything. I didn't stop running until I hit a gas station. The sheriff's deputy listened with the patient look you give to drunks. He nodded, took notes, promised to send someone up the trail. But I knew it wouldn't matter, because when I finally staggered into a hostel 2 days later, I opened the shelter register to warn other hikers. And my blood froze. There, written neatly in block letters, was an entry for tonight's date. My trail name, Warehouse, and the note, leaving early. Marcus prefers the road gaps. It's been months since I left the trail, and I still wake at night to the sound of slow footsteps circling my bed. I moved apartments twice, threw out every piece of gear, quit hiking altogether. But the other day, on my way home from a double shift, I passed a trailhead near Roanoke. A ragged figure stood at the tree line, hood up, boots unlaced. He didn't move, didn't wave, just watched as I drove past, eyes dead and steady. I'm not going back out there, but I don't think it matters anymore. Because once you meet him, the drifter never leaves the trail. And now, I'm afraid, neither will I. My name is Caleb Finch. I've worked 12 years as a paramedic in Knoxville, and this past spring my nerves finally snapped. Sirens that never stopped, radios that never went quiet, patients who died no matter how fast I drove. It all built up until I couldn't shut my eyes without hearing beeping monitors and broken ribs under my hands. So I took leave. My supervisor called it burnout. My grandmother would have said, "Son, your soul needs quiet." Quiet was what I thought I'd found in a little one-room cabin my cousin owned, halfway up a forgotten hollow in East Tennessee. No cell service, no Wi-Fi, no neighbors. Just the forest pressing in close, a stovepipe chimney, and a creek singing me to sleep. But quiet has a way of letting you hear things you'd rather not. The first night, I lay awake longer than I meant to. The woods weren't silent, not exactly. An owl called down in the ravine, and the wind moved through the poplars. I was drifting when I heard it. A whistle. Not music, not a tune. Just two notes. Short, rising. I sat up, heart suddenly fast. It came again, faint, somewhere past the tree line. 2:17 a.m., my watch said. I told myself it was nothing. Hunters. A neighbor miles off. Just sound carrying weird. I forced myself back down. But when the second night came, and I'd nearly forgotten about it, the whistle returned. 2:17 a.m., on the dot. Closer. By the third night, I wasn't telling myself stories anymore. The whistle came again at exactly the same time. Only now it wasn't faint. It was clear, as if whoever, or whatever, was standing just beyond the fire ring. Two notes. Patient. I didn't move. I didn't answer. My grandmother's words came back to me, half remembered from childhood. Don't whistle back in the dark, Caleb. That's an invitation. I lay frozen till dawn, and when the sun came up, I poured salt from the shaker across the threshold and along the sill of the single window. Folk habits, sure, but habits exist for reasons. Daytime made me feel foolish. I chopped wood, read a paperback, even laughed out loud at myself. Who was I? A grown man, spooked by a sound? But that night, at 2:17, it came again, this time followed by the metallic rattle of my door handle. I had braced it with a chair, and I watched the handle jiggle against the pole of my flashlight beam. Someone was testing it. The whistle came, soft, almost thoughtful. Then the wall shuddered, as if a shoulder or palm pressed hard against it. Then the opposite wall. Something circled, pressing, testing. I didn't breathe. My hands shook on the flashlight. When dawn came, I found the dirt around the cabin churned up with prints. Not boots, not bare feet. Hooves. Cloven marks circling the cabin like livestock had paced all night. But there were no farms within miles. I packed my gear, ready to leave. But the old logging road out was chained across, a fresh lock looped through the steel. No way my cousin had done it. He'd given me permission. No way he'd lock me in. When I hiked up to try for cell service, my phone flickered to one bar, then none. Static ate the emergency call before it connected. That night, I made a decision. I wasn't opening the door no matter what. At 2:17 sharp, the whistle came. Then another whistle, lower, from the opposite side of the cabin. Two sources. The door handle rattled hard enough to creak. Something heavy leaned on the wall. The lantern flame shook. Then silence. I didn't sleep a second. In the morning, I found more than hoof prints. A length of braided fishing line had been tied around the doorknob, strung low across the threshold. A trip line, nearly invisible. If I had rushed out in the dark, I'd have gone sprawling. That's when the panic settled into something colder. This wasn't folklore. This was people. People who wanted me to believe it was folklore. I checked my pack. Under the flap, duct taped to the frame, was a prepaid phone with location sharing active. Someone had slipped it there while I slept. They didn't just want to scare me. They wanted to track me, herd me. I barely ate that day. Just sat staring at the door, the line of salt, the woods beyond. When 2:17 rolled around, I was waiting. The whistle came. The knob turned. The wall bowed as a shoulder slammed it. I jammed my trekking pole through the handle loop, yanked the curtain rod from the window, and sprayed bear spray through the mail slot. A scream tore through the night, followed by coughing. I kicked the salt line wide open, shoved the door, and barreled through. My shoulder hit something solid and sent it staggering off the porch. For a moment, in the glow of the lantern behind me, I saw it. A man, hoof-shaped board strapped to his boots with wire, dead eyes streaming from the spray. I ran. Branches whipped my arms. Laurel tore at my jacket. I didn't look back. When the sodium lights of a gas station glowed ahead, I nearly sobbed. I collapsed against the pumps, chest heaving. That's when I saw the tailgate of my truck. A neat white line of salt traced across the handle. And under the wiper, a folded scrap of paper. 2 pencil music notes. I don't know if it was locals running some sick ritual, or men who wanted me too scared to think straight. Maybe both. All I know is, I still wake at 2:17 most nights. And sometimes, just before the air conditioning kicks on, I hear it. 2 notes, soft, patient, waiting for me to answer. My name's Aaron Talbot. I'm 27, a substitute teacher from Columbus, and I thought I knew what a dog looked like. Big or small, shaggy or lean. I'd grown up around them, volunteered at shelters, even fostered a pit mix through grad school. But the thing I saw on that trail in Daniel Boone National Forest wasn't a dog. Not really. And it's taken me weeks to even put the memory into words without feeling like I'm being watched again. It was late summer when I drove down into Kentucky for a weekend hike. I wanted quiet, a break from grading essays and wrangling classrooms full of teenagers. My plan was simple: a long out and back trail, a packed lunch, maybe a swim if I found a safe spot in the creek. The morning was ordinary enough. Mist lifting from the hollows, cicadas already buzzing, the trail damp under my boots. I walked a couple of miles in silence, letting my head clear. Then I saw it. At first I thought someone's loose dog had wandered the trail. It stood 50 yards ahead, right in the middle of the path, framed by 2 poplars. Big, black-coated, ears tall, but not quite pointed. I stopped, waited for it to move. It didn't. It just stood there, staring at me. When I say staring, I mean unblinking. Not the way dogs glance and look away. Not curious or wary. Its head never tilted. Its ears never twitched. Its gaze felt like a weight pressed into me. "Hey, pup," I called softly, my voice higher than usual, the way you talk to strays. Nothing. No wag. No pant. No sound of breath. I took a step forward, and it shifted sideways, perfectly, blocking the trail again. My stomach tightened. I decided not to challenge it. I eased into the brush, circling wide, keeping my eyes on it. The ground sucked at my boots, briars snagging my pants. I clambered back onto the path 50 feet ahead. The dog was gone. Relief washed through me, though it didn't last. Because when I turned around the next bend, there it was again. Closer this time. That was the beginning of it following me. Not charging, not even trotting, just appearing. Always the same distance behind. Always watching. The strangest part was the silence. Big dogs breathe hard. They pant. They rustle leaves. This thing made no sound. Not a twig snapped under its weight. Not a huff of air. It just padded after me in absolute silence, mile after mile. Every time I glanced back, its eyes were fixed on me, still unblinking. By the 3rd mile, my nerves were shredded. I tried humming to steady myself, but my voice cracked. I thought about throwing a rock, but something in me said that would be a mistake. So I kept walking, pace steady, pretending I didn't notice. My water bottle shook against my pack with every step. Finally, I decided to turn back. The air had grown heavy, like a storm pressing down, though the sky was still clear. When I pivoted, the dog stopped, stood there unmoving. I walked backward a dozen paces. It never blinked. Then, without warning, it straightened. Not like a dog stretching, like a person standing up. Its spine uncoiled, long and unnatural, until it loomed taller than me. Legs unfolding, arms dangling. The black coat hung strangely, like it wasn't fur, but something thrown over its body. It turned without a sound and stepped into the trees. Upright. Gone. I don't remember the walk back clearly. My legs carried me on autopilot, brain buzzing with static. Every rustle in the brush made me flinch. At the trailhead, my car was the only one left. My hands shook so badly, I dropped the keys twice before getting the door open. That's when I saw the dust on the rear bumper. Paw prints. Circling. But not all of them were paws. Every so often, the impression changed. To a heel. A human heel. I drove out fast, gravel spitting behind me. I didn't look in the rearview mirror. In town, I stopped at a diner, still pale, hands trembling. I told the waitress, an older woman with a hard Appalachian face, what I'd seen. Her expression didn't change. "You didn't talk to it, did you?" she asked. I shook my head. "Good," she said simply. "Don't ever answer when one of 'em watches you. That's how they know you're fair game." I laughed nervously, trying to brush it off. "You mean a skinwalker story?" Her eyes didn't waver. "Call it what you want. Folks around here just say they're testing your fear. Most pass the test. Some don't." I didn't sleep that night in the motel, because when I checked the windshield before bed, there was a single mark drawn in the dust. Not a paw, not a hand, just one long line, straight down, like someone dragging a finger slowly from top to bottom. Like it was reminding me, it hadn't finished watching yet. It's been 3 weeks. Back in Columbus, I've tried to pretend life is normal again. Classrooms, papers, substitute schedules. But every time I drive home after dark, I feel eyes on me from the tree line along the highway. And sometimes, when I close the curtains, I swear I glimpse the reflection of 2 pale eyes staring back. Unblinking. Waiting. My name is Matthew Carden, but everyone just calls me Matt. I'm 33 years old. I turn wrenches at a little auto shop outside Johnstown, Pennsylvania. And until last fall, I never believed the weird stories you sometimes hear about the deep woods. But then I saw the staircase. And worse, my little brother touched it. Ryan's 29, a restless guy who never stays in one place for long. When he came back from Colorado, he wanted to reconnect the way brothers do when they haven't really spoken in a couple years. His idea was a weekend hike deep into Forbes State Forest. Not the tourist trails. He wanted the parts without markers. The places you only find if you study topo maps or ask hunters who know where the deer go. We left early Saturday, packs heavy with cheap gear, boots already wet from dew. The forest was beautiful. Thick hemlocks, tangles of laurel, a damp smell like old stone. For the first few hours it was normal. Then we came to the clearing. It was maybe 20 yards across, sunlight filtering down through a hole in the canopy. And in the very center of it stood a staircase. Perfect. Intact. Not ruins, not half-buried boards, but a clean, freestanding flight of wooden stairs. About 20 steps, rising into nothing. No landing, no walls, no house. Just stairs, upright, solid, as if someone had built them for the sole purpose of confusing anyone who found them. "Holy shit," Ryan laughed. "What is this? An art project?" My stomach dropped. Something about it felt wrong in my bones. "Don't touch it," I muttered. But he was already stepping closer. The staircase looked brand new. The wood had no rot, no moss, no nails sticking out. When Ryan laid his hand on the banister, he froze. "Ryan?" I asked. His face drained white. He swayed, doubled over like he'd been gut punched. "Dizzy," he croaked. "God." He dropped to his knees, clutching his head. I rushed to him, dragging him away from the stairs. His pupils looked blown wide, his skin clammy. He retched, but nothing came up. We sat there until the color slowly came back to his cheeks. He wouldn't answer when I asked what he felt. He just shook his head, muttering, "Don't know. Don't know." I wanted to leave right then, but he insisted he could keep hiking. So we pushed on, though the trees seemed darker, closer, like they knew something we didn't. That night, in the tent, I woke to Ryan screaming. He thrashed in his bag, hands clawing at the air. I shook him awake, heart hammering. His eyes darted around, wet with tears. "Faces," he whispered. They were pressed right up to the walls, looking in. Hundreds of them. I tried to calm him, but I had dreamed too. I dreamed of whispers, low and urgent, in a language that felt familiar but impossible to understand. When I blinked awake, I could still feel breath against my ear. Neither of us slept after that. The next day, Ryan was quiet. He stumbled often, like he wasn't watching the ground. Once he stopped mid-trail and stared off into the woods, eyes unfocused. "You hear that?" he asked. "Hear what?" He shook his head. "Never mind." That evening, he had a nosebleed that wouldn't quit for 20 minutes. His hands trembled. When he finally slept, he murmured strings of numbers in his dreams. I wrote them down out of instinct. 2, 7, 14, 3, 19. Nonsense, maybe. But the rhythm of it chilled me. We cut the trip short. I drove us home in silence. In town, I made the mistake of mentioning it to an old guy at the gas station, just to test my own sanity. He froze with the pump in his hand. You didn't touch it, did you? I admitted Ryan had. The man's face hardened. Should have left it alone. Rangers find him sometimes. Stairs where they don't belong. They flag the area off, tell us not to hunt near. Old folks say they're doors. Not meant for us. He looked at me hard. Pray he didn't walk up. I didn't know how to answer. Back home, Ryan wasn't the same. He quit his job within a week. Couldn't focus. Wouldn't explain himself. Sometimes I'd catch him staring at the ceiling, lips moving, like he was counting. The nosebleeds got worse, and he started walking at night. I'd wake to the sound of the front door opening, find him barefoot on the lawn, head tipped back, arms slowly lifting as if he were climbing invisible rungs. When I pulled him inside, he'd resist at first, then slump, muttering, "It's higher now. I can almost reach." One night, I woke at 3 a.m. to silence too deep to ignore. No crickets, no traffic hum, just stillness. The couch where he'd been sleeping was empty. I ran outside. There he was, at the treeline, barefoot, pajamas soaked with dew. His hands moved in the air, gripping nothing. His foot lifted and pressed down again, like he was ascending invisible steps. "Ryan," I shouted. He didn't turn, didn't even pause. One hand lifted higher, his body rising slightly, his other foot finding a place in thin air. I ran to him, grabbed his arm. It felt wrong. Cold. Lighter than it should have been, like gravity wasn't holding him properly. He finally turned to me, eyes glassy, unfocused. "It's waiting," he whispered. "You can't see it, but it's here. I have to keep going." I yanked him back. He resisted, body straining upward, until we both crashed to the ground. When I looked up, the stars seemed wrong, tilted, too many. And for a heartbeat, I swear I saw the outline of a staircase vanishing into the night sky. Ryan won't talk about it now. He eats little, sleeps less. Sometimes I wake to find him standing on a chair, reaching at the ceiling as if steps continue upward. I don't know how to help him. Doctors call it stress, psychosis, sleepwalking. None of them believe me when I say it started in the woods. But I know what I saw. I know the forest left something inside him when he touched that banister. And I know someday, I'll wake up to find him gone. Not walked away, just climbed until there was nothing left to see. My name is Jordan Whitaker. Most people just call me Jordy. I'm 24, no degree, no real career, just bouncing between landscaping, stocking shifts, whatever pays rent for the month. Most weekends, if my friends ask me to get out of town, I go. That's how I ended up camping on a back road in West Virginia last summer, sitting by a fire when I first heard the voice. And I swear to God, it sounded like a child begging for help. It was me, Darren, and Mia. We weren't hardcore backpackers, just kids with a borrowed tent, a cooler, and a cheap fire pit. The site was little more than a clearing off a service road, maybe half a mile from the nearest trail. We'd hiked in with our bags, set up, and started drinking as the sun dropped behind the ridges. By midnight, the crickets were loud, and the fire was low. Darren was halfway through a story about wrecking his truck when it came. "Help me. Thin. Reedy. Somewhere out past the timberline." We froze. Mia laughed nervously. "Did you hear?" Sounded like a kid. Darren cut in, frowning toward the trees. I told myself it was an echo, maybe from the highway down in the hollow. But the night had that close, sealed quality where sound didn't carry. Then it came again. "Help me." Same voice, same tone, same exact pitch, like someone had copied and pasted the sound. Darren was on his feet instantly, grabbing the flashlight. "Someone's out there." "Wait." Mia stood too, grabbing his arm. "That's too far. You don't know where it's coming from." He pulled against her grip. "What if it's a kid? What if somebody's lost?" But I'd been listening closely. The second call hadn't shifted at all. It hadn't grown nearer or fainter. It was like the woods had pressed play again on the same recording. "Hold on," I said. "Think about it." It didn't move. Kids don't scream exactly the same way twice. Darren hesitated, breathing hard. Then it came a third time. "Help me." Exactly the same crack in the voice. The same pause after. Mia whispered, "That's not right." We argued in low voices, Darren furious at the idea of ignoring it. But Mia wouldn't let go of his sleeve, and I wouldn't either. So we stayed. The voice kept calling. Every few minutes, like clockwork. Always the same. The forest felt colder with every repetition. By 2 a.m., the fire was down to embers, and none of us had spoken for half an hour. The voice still drifted through the trees. It never came closer. It never faded away. It just stayed, like it could go on forever. When dawn finally broke, the silence felt deafening. Not even birdsong. We packed quickly, none of us meeting each other's eyes. I thought maybe I'd imagined the whole thing until Mia pointed out broken branches leading away from the clearing. They were snapped at knee height, fresh, like something heavy had moved through. Darren muttered that it proved someone was out there. But 100 feet down the trail, we found something worse. A little pink and white sneaker, clean as if it had been dropped minutes earlier. Mia picked it up with shaking hands. The sole wasn't even dirty. "Someone's messing with us," I said, though my voice wavered. We left it where it was and got out fast. In town, we stopped for gas. The attendant was an older man, beard gray, eyes tired. He asked where we'd been camping. When we told him, his expression hardened. "You hear anything?" he asked. We hesitated. Then Mia admitted, a kid's voice, crying for help. The man set the pump down slowly. "You're lucky you stayed put." "What do you mean?" I asked. He looked at us one by one. "Old folks say there's things in those woods that can't make their own sounds, so they take ours. Hunters use fawn cries to bring in predators, right? Well, something out there uses people's cries to bring in people, especially at night, especially the soft-hearted." "That's just a story," Darren muttered, though he wouldn't meet the man's gaze. The attendant shrugged. "Maybe, but you ever hear the same cry twice, word for word? Like a record skipping? Best keep your ass by the fire. Folks that go looking usually don't come back." We didn't talk much on the drive home, but as the highway cut between two ridges, my phone buzzed. An unknown number had left a voicemail. I hit play, and the cab filled with the same voice we'd heard all night. "Help me." Identical. Every quiver, every breath. "Help me," Mia gasped. Darren slammed the brakes, pulling onto the shoulder. I stared at the screen. The message length said 16 seconds, but the playback kept looping the same 3 words. "Help me." I fumbled to stop it, but when I did, the voicemail disappeared from the log completely. Just gone. The 3 of us sat in silence, breathing hard. Then, faint through the open window, from the woods beyond the guardrail. "Help me." Distant. Patient. Waiting. That was months ago. I deleted my voicemail app. Switched phones. Moved apartments. But some nights, lying awake, I still hear it. Not from outside. Not from a speaker. From the dark corner of the room, where the sound doesn't belong. Always the same voice. Always the same tone. "Help me." And I know one of these nights, I'll make the mistake of answering back. My name's Alex Garner, and I've always thought of myself as a practical guy. I fix things for a living. Industrial washers, HVAC units, heavy fans in factories. Things break, I figure out why, and I patch them up. Simple. That's why, when I went hiking with my friends last fall and saw the circle, I couldn't accept what happened. Not then. Not now. Because I saw Ben fall. I saw what the stones did to him, and I saw what we dragged out. There were 4 of us. Me, Ben, Tyler, and Kayla. We weren't hardcore backpackers, but we liked hitting the Allegheny backcountry for long weekends. Tent camping, cheap beer in the packs, the usual. That Saturday, the sky was pale and the leaves had started to turn. We were maybe 6 miles off the service road when Kayla spotted the clearing. "Guys," she called, "come look at this." In the center of the clearing lay a perfect circle of stones. Not a fire ring. Too large, maybe 12 feet across. Not natural either. Each rock was smooth, flat, pale, set tight against the next. A ring cut into the ground with careful precision. Druids, Tyler joked, pulling out his phone for pictures. Alien landing pad. Ben grinned. Or witchcraft. He'd always been the reckless one. "Let's keep moving," I muttered. The hairs on my arms had risen the second I saw it. But Ben was already stepping forward. The moment he crossed the line, his body jerked. His knees buckled, and he hit the ground hard, arms locked at his sides. His eyes were wide, staring at nothing. His lips parted as if he wanted to scream, but no sound came. "Ben!" Kayla shrieked, rushing to him. I was frozen for half a heartbeat. Then I lunged in, grabbing his shoulders. His body was stiff, like every muscle was firing at once. Tyler grabbed his legs. Pull him out. We dragged him across the stones, his boots scraping dirt. The instant his torso slid past the circle's edge, his body went limp. He gasped, sucking air like he'd been drowning, coughing, gagging. His face was slick with sweat. What the hell happened? I asked. Ben blinked up at us, dazed. What do you mean? I just tripped. We stared at him. No, I said. You collapsed. You weren't breathing. But he shook his head stubbornly, as if we were lying to him. I don't remember anything. I'm fine. Except he wasn't. We packed up fast, all joking gone. Nobody wanted to camp near that clearing. But as I hoisted my pack, I glanced back at the circle. Something had changed. 2 of the stones at the edge were no longer flush. They'd been shifted outward, breaking the perfect ring. And I swear the ground inside looked darker, like the soil had been freshly turned. That night, we rented a cheap motel room in town. None of us wanted to drive 3 hours home in silence. We bought takeout, sat on the beds, and tried to laugh about it. But every time Ben blinked too slowly, Kayla flinched. Around midnight, I finally drifted off. When I woke, the first thing I noticed was the sound of feet. Soft, dragging, padding across carpet. My heart pounded as I sat up. The room was dark except for the orange glow of the parking lot through the blinds. Ben was moving. He was barefoot, shuffling around the beds in a slow circle. His face was blank, eyes half-lidded. Ben? I whispered. He didn't answer. He just kept circling, round and round. When I turned on the lamp, he froze. What the hell are you doing? Tyler snapped groggily. Ben blinked, confused. What? I was just looking for the stones. We all stared. What stones? Kayla whispered. Ben's eyes darted. The ones from the circle. They're not all there. The next morning, we checked out quick. None of us talked much. Outside the motel door, in the gravel, was a crescent of dirt. Not random scatter, arranged deliberately, a rough half circle. When Ben saw it, he smiled faintly. See? Someone's finishing it. We shoved him into the car and drove home. I wish the story ended there. But 2 weeks later, Kayla called me at 3 a.m., sobbing. She'd woken to find Ben standing in her yard. She hadn't told him where she lived. He was barefoot again, covered in mud, and when she demanded what he was doing, he said, "The circle's bigger now. You need to come see." She locked her doors and called the cops, but by the time they arrived, he was gone. Since then, he's called me 3 times. Each time, the background noise is the same, rocks clinking together. The last time, his voice was calm, distant. "It's almost finished, Alex. Just a few more stones. Then you'll understand." I hung up, blocked the number. But yesterday morning, outside my apartment door, someone had arranged pale flat stones in a neat arc. Not complete yet, not closed, but waiting. I keep thinking about the man at the gas station, the one we told in passing. He'd gone pale and said, "You dragged him out, didn't you? You never do that. Those rings aren't for you. They're for keeping something in." If that's true, then when we broke the circle pulling Ben free, maybe we let something else out. Or worse, maybe it came out with him. And every day since, he's just been finishing the work it started. I haven't been sleeping. I hear rocks moving at night, faint clinks outside my window. One of these mornings, I'll wake up to find the circle completed. And when I step outside, I don't think I'll be able to stop myself from stepping in. My name's Daniel Holt, Danny to most, and I've been driving Appalachian backroads my whole life. I work as a flooring installer, which means I'm usually leaving job sites late, crawling through winding hollows after dark with a truck full of tools. I've seen deer leap across the lane, trucks flipped on wet curves, even the occasional drunk stumbling down the yellow line. But nothing prepared me for what I saw on Black Hollow Road. And I'll never forget the night I realized some things out here see you, even without eyes. It was last October, the kind of night where the cold sinks into the cab, even with the heat on. Midnight had passed, and I was driving home from a job near Pound, Virginia. The GPS said my route cut 20 lonely miles before I'd hit the highway again. No cell service, no houses, just sharp turns carved into the side of mountains. I was running on fumes, both in my tank and in my body. The road twisted and dropped through the trees, my headlights flashing across wet guardrails. That's when I saw him. At first, I thought it was just a hiker. Someone stranded. He stood on the shoulder just outside the reach of my brights. Tall, thin, shoulders hunched under a long coat. I slowed down, instinct telling me to be decent. Out here, people get lost. People get hurt. I rolled the window an inch, ready to ask if he needed a ride. But as I got closer, unease crawled up my spine. He wasn't standing like someone waiting for help. He was still, too still. His hands hung loose at his sides. His head was tilted slightly, like he was staring right at me. The problem was, he had no eyes. Where his eyes should have been was just smooth, pale skin. Blank. I slammed my foot on the gas, tires squealing against the wet asphalt. The temperature in the cab dropped so fast my breath fogged the windshield. The steering wheel felt slick under my palms. It was like the air had thickened into something I had to push through. Heavy, suffocating. I risked one glance in the mirror. He stood in the middle of the road now, right where my headlights had swept. Head still tilted, facing me. I didn't stop again until I saw the glow of the highway signs. My chest hurt from how hard my heart was pounding. I told myself it was a trick of the light, that I'd imagined the missing eyes, that exhaustion had twisted something ordinary into something grotesque. But deep down, I knew better. A week later, I was at a diner in Whitesburg, still shaken. I told the story to the waitress when she asked why I looked tired. I made it a joke, tried to laugh it off. Saw a guy with no eyes out on Black Hollow. Guess Halloween came early. The old man at the counter hadn't said a word all night, just sipped his coffee. But when I said that, he looked up at me. You saw him? His voice was flat, matter of fact. I stammered, I guess so. He nodded once. He sees without seeing. You were lucky. I asked him what he meant, but he just turned back to his coffee and wouldn't say another word. After that, I avoided that stretch. I'd take the long way, burn extra gas, anything to keep me from turning onto Black Hollow Road. But avoidance doesn't mean escape, because sometimes, driving home on other empty roads, headlights cutting the dark, I'd feel it. That weight, like someone was staring through the glass, through me, pressing into the back of my skull. And once, during a storm, my windshield fogged up. I cranked the defrost, wiped it with my sleeve. The condensation cleared, except for two perfect circles, like something had leaned close. Two eyeless sockets pressed to the glass. I swerved, heart hammering, nearly hit the guardrail. When I blinked again, they were gone. But I knew what I'd seen, and I knew what it meant. People say the man with no eyes is a ghost, some victim of a mining collapse or a car wreck on the ridge. Others whisper older things, that he's not a man at all, but something that learned how to stand like one, something that doesn't need eyes to see. Whatever he is, one thing's certain. When he looks at you, you feel it. He doesn't chase. He doesn't need to. He just waits for the night you're too tired, too careless, too curious. The night you stop instead of driving past. And if you stop, you don't come back. I don't drive alone at night anymore, not if I can help it. But every so often, when the road is empty and the dark presses too close, I catch myself glancing in the rearview mirror, afraid I'll see him there again, standing dead center in the lane, head tilted, watching, without eyes. My name is Mark Ellison. I'm 35, and my work isn't anything glamorous. Freelance cartography, contract GIS jobs, little side hustles tracing old survey lines. I spend more time staring at faded maps and government printouts than I do with people. Sometimes, though, I like to ground truth what I'm looking at. To walk the ridges, find where old service roads used to run. Check if those faint lines on topographic sheets still mean anything in the real world. That's how I ended up on a trail that should have been forgotten. And that's how I found the rocks that whispered my name. It was early fall, a weekday when I had no contracts due. I drove out past Asheville into a patch of Blue Ridge forest that used to be logged heavy in the 70s. On an old forestry map, I'd noticed a trail marked faintly, almost scratched out. No name, no reference in the newer data. That kind of thing gets under my skin. I wanted to see if anything was still there. Sure enough, when I parked near a pull-off and started walking, I found it. A narrow track winding uphill, almost erased by laurel and leaf litter. It felt less like a trail and more like memory stamped into dirt. For the first hour, I hiked in silence. Not the pleasant kind. I realized, after a while, that I hadn't heard a single bird. No cicadas, no gnats humming in my ears. Just the sound of my boots. By dusk, I came to a clearing. It was a shallow bowl in the terrain, maybe 30 feet across. On the far side rose an outcrop of rock, dark, low, ridged like something had been pressed against it for centuries. Perfect place to pitch a tent, I thought. Flat enough, sheltered enough. I should have turned back. I set up camp as the sun slipped down, pulled out a can of chili, ate by the glow of my headlamp. The air had a strange stillness, heavy and watchful. That's when I heard it. At first I thought it was the wind, a hollow sound rising faintly from the rocks behind me. But the trees weren't moving. Not a branch swayed. I turned off my headlamp, listening hard. The sound came again, low, faint, like voices carried through a tunnel. Whispers. I sat frozen, heart hammering. "Hello," I called, instantly regretting it. The whispers answered, but not to me. They didn't change volume, didn't shift location. Just kept murmuring, steady, through stone. I told myself it was water under the rock. A cave stream, air currents. I lay down in the tent, pretending to believe that. But the whispers didn't stop. Around midnight, I gave in to the urge to press my ear against the outcrop. The stone was cold, too cold, and through it, clear as breath on glass, I heard words. Not sentences, fragments, names. Some I recognized, my grandmother's, a kid from high school who drowned, even mine. And over, the same phrase. "Let us out. We remember your name." I stumbled back, bile in my throat. My knees shook. Back in the tent, I sat clutching my knife, though I didn't know what I thought it would do against stone. That's when I heard it. Movement. Not above me. Beneath me. The sound of something crawling inside a space too tight, too shallow. Like bodies writhing just under the surface. I shined my flashlight at the rock. For a second, it looked darker. Slicker. Like it was pulsing. Like it was breathing. I didn't sleep. At dawn, I stuffed everything into my pack without eating and started down the trail. My legs felt weak, like I'd walked all night though I hadn't gone anywhere. When I finally reached the car, I checked the map again, wanting to pin down where the clearing had been. But the section of the trail I'd followed, where I knew I'd walked, where I'd camped, was blurred, ink smudged, lines ghosting into nothing, as though the map itself refused to remember. Back in town, I tried asking about it. At the gas station, at a diner. People shut down the second I described the rock. One man stood up and left mid-conversation. Finally, an old ranger, sunburned and slow-moving, let me finish. He said only one thing. Some things in the Appalachians were buried. But they weren't dead. Just waiting. The rocks remember. I don't hike anymore. My gear gathers dust in the closet. But 3 weeks after that night, I woke in my apartment to silence. No cars on the street. No pipes humming in the walls. Just the same hollow murmur I'd heard in the clearing. It came from behind the drywall. I pressed my ear to it, heart thundering, and I heard the same voices. Clearer now. Let us out. We remember your name. I stumbled back, but not before noticing the faint dust at the baseboard. Letters traced with a fingertip, jagged but legible. My name. Waiting. I don't know what I let follow me home that night. I don't know what remembers me, or why the voices keep repeating. All I know is that sometimes, when the apartment is quiet, I hear stones shifting beneath the floor, like something is moving upward, and one night soon, I'm afraid the wall itself will breathe.